Okay, great. So this is Ann Weeks. I'm the chairman of the Wenham Planning Board, and I'm opening this meeting of the Planning Board on Thursday, May 26, 2022. It's a virtual meeting because of the ongoing COVID emergency, and we're here tonight or this afternoon to talk about an agenda that includes discussing membership for an advisory board for our or advisory committee for our upcoming master plan project. I am on the phone and cannot see who is on the Zoom call, except that I know that Margaret Hoffman, our staff person, and Catherine Tinsley, our recording secretary, are on. So I think other people, if I can ask the vice chairman if he is on video to say who's on the call, that would be terrific.
Ian, I'm sorry, right now Dan is not on with us.
I'm more than happy.
It's late.
So Peter Clay's
Okay, terrific.
here, Rick Woodland's here, Dave Anderson's here. And we have Catherine Harrison, Joan, I'm going to screw it up, Frisella, and
Michelle.
Kirsten Alexander. Sorry, Paula. Did you get that in?
Terrific. I got it. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. As soon as I'm home, I'll scoot over to the office there and turn on my computer, and I can see everybody. Margaret, do you want to talk about my understanding of the agenda is as I described it, which is that we're discussing the contours of an advisory committee, and it sounds like the committee members, once we decide how many and who they are, need to be appointed by the Board of Select. So let's that's what I have. Do you have any more detail that you want to share?
Yeah, thank you, Ann. So you are correct. We found out that the select board technically should appoint this committee. And I do have 3 people who have expressed interest. We've put the requests for letters of interest out on Facebook, social media, different social media sites. We've also sent it by email to people. I have a list also of boards and committees in town that you guys may want to consider for to be on the master plan committee. You know, and then we can invite them. We can ask the chairperson, maybe they can appoint someone, or not appoint, but recommend someone from their committees. But I think this board tonight, if we could just come up with a list of who you would like to see on the committee, not the person themselves, but which other committees you'd like to see represented on the master plan.
Right. And Margaret, do you have a list of the sections of the master plan? So in other words,
Sure.
the categories of information that we are going to need to come to grips with, because
Sure.
I think that would be very helpful in informing which boards and committees are relevant, or
Yeah,
most relevant,
sure.
if you will.
Yep, I'm gonna pull that up, Ian, so I can tell you that. Just give me one second. I'm just gonna move this away. Give me 1 second. So the sections of a master plan that are required in any Massachusetts master plan are economic development, housing, land use, cultural and historic resources, open space and recreation, community services and facilities, transportation and circulation, and we've added sustainability, natural resources, water and energy. So those are the different categories that the master plan will address.
Margaret, what was
Yeah.
the one after open spaces?
Let me go scroll back up. open space and recreation, community services and facilities, Department of Public Works, Council on Aging, Park and Recreation, the library. So services and facilities, and then transportation and circulation.
Got it. Thank you.
Can that be forwarded around to all the members so we could have that in our notes? Have it easily accessible? I wrote them
Yeah.
down, but,
Sure. You know where I just pull it off the RFP.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, the RFP gives a real good description of what we're expecting.
Thank you, Margaret.
Sure. I'll forward that to you guys.
So of that list, I can think of several boards that are, so the water board, the open space and recreation committee, someone from affordable housing, someone from the historic district commission. And then, I mean, I think we've discussed having a couple people from town staff to represent services. And then I don't know about the school board. And I also don't know who would be on for economic development. Perhaps someone from the selects. I'm thinking Peter Clay. But I don't know about that. Anyway, that's my thought, which I'm giving to you in a lump because I'm about to leave my car and go into the house, and I'm going to put you on mute so you don't have to listen to me breathing as I walk up the stairs. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Ann. Dan's just joining us now. So
Hello, all.
hi, Dan.
Pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's a little windy at Patton Park, but it's beautiful.
Great. So I think what Ann is saying makes sense to have people from certain boards and committees that are actually addressed in the RFP. The Open Space and Rec Committee, I know Ann is on that one. I'm going to actually pull up also my my list. So
I want to make clear too that I'm not limiting my thoughts to those people, but of the, if we're thinking about a structure that, starting with people from each of those committees and then having some at-large membership, I think would be a useful thing too.
great. Yeah.
If it's conversation time, I thought also having somebody either from the Cultural Council or something in that area would also, I think, help us look at the future of different kinds of services so that we can get a different perspective of not just, okay, here are the nuts and the bolts, but what are the kind of the non-tangibles that make a town better.
So I took it on myself to reach out to Dave Reed, who's on the the Wenham Finance and Advisory Board. And because I'm pretty sure he's taking over for Jim Purdy. And what he said is that he said he definitely believes that FinCom needs to be involved in the master planning process. But he said that he has to look at his time commitments for the next several months. And he said that Jim Purdy and I will be meeting next week to develop a transition plan for FinCom chair. So I will include this topic and touch base shortly for what it's worth. So FinCom.
I do have the list of all of the committees, pretty much all the committees that we have in town that are appointed. The only other one is the planning board that's, I think, and the select board. So I imagine we'll have a select board member on it. Peter, I don't know whether your select board has talked about that yet.
Nope.
My hope is that we can have your meeting again on June 7th, right? Is
I think
your
it's the
next
9th.
meeting. The planning board's the 9th.
Oh,
So
and we're meeting on the 6th. Sorry.
I think it's Tuesday, the 7th of June, when the select board would meet, right? But anyway, I don't know that I think you're doing some of the town appointments that night. And then
Yes,
following, at your following meeting, which is on June 21st, I think you're going to be appointing, new members to boards and committees. I would like to get a list of boards and committees that you would like to see represented. And then I can reach out to them and ask them if they could either ask someone from their committee to be on, or if their chairperson wants to be on it within the next week or so.
And it doesn't need to be the chairperson if they're busy, like in FinCom, if they want to assign somebody, if he's busy, he's still going to be feeding data into that person. So
Exactly.
if he's really busy, don't let him be, upset. We should just find someone else in his
so,
group.
so do we want to go down this list and decide which ones we should include?
If you want.
Can I interrupt for a second? Apologies for showing up a little late. Margaret, could you just tell me what I missed or what did you guys cover so I
Yeah.
can get on the same page?
Sure, Dan, all we did was go over what is needed in the master plan, what things the master plan is going to address. So it's economic development, housing, land use, cultural and historic resources, open space and recreation, community services and facilities, transportation and circulation, and then sustainability, natural resources, water and energy.
Is that all one?
The main
And
category.
the
Yep.
other thing we did, Dan, which you may have missed, was to try to identify what towns and committees matched up with all of those items. So in other
Yep.
words, if there were somebody in each of those committees, would that make sense? That was the conversation.
Okay. Have we talked about just generally how large a committee we want to have or anything else? Okay.
Not yet.
No, not yet, because it was sort of like, okay, so let's start from what is it supposed to cover and how many committees are there, and do we want to add large members, and then we'll see how many people that is and have a conversation. I think that's where my head was going, but
Makes sense to me.
Agreed.
So why don't we just start at the top?
So
So-
before we go through that exercise, can I just throw out there that I think it might be helpful to have a conversation of, do we want to have a smaller committee or a larger committee? Because this is a pretty long list. And if we start saying, okay, one from everybody here, we're before we even get to at large, we're looking at like, I don't know,
Mhm.
15 or more people
So,
on this committee.
so Dan, what I would offer is I don't think somebody from the cemetery commission needs to be on this plan.
Well,
And
Okay.
okay.
I think we
So
could
why-
all
so
go, through-
if we just walk through
yes,
with a mind to smaller is better than ridiculously large, right? So affordable housing, we need somebody from affordable housing.
and there
Well,
are
that was-
there are some overlays for somebody in affordable housing should also be able to speak to the public housing situation, right? Because that's part of what they should be educated on. So there is some overlap, I believe, in some of these that we'll just see natural culling.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's go down the list. Affordable housing. Yes, right, or I'll do this and just don't say yes. Say no, okay? So cemetery commission, I say no. So everybody agrees. Community
say
preservation.
no.
What?
I said no. Oh, I thought we were all supposed to say no if we.
Okay,
agree
no,
with you.
no for that one, no,
Community Preservation Act.
no.
I lean no.
I say no, because that gets picked up by other things too.
They're just a
Like-
they're a financing group.
Correct.
Conservation Commission.
I think yes.
Probably.
Yeah, I think yes.
I agree.
Okay, Council on Aging,
I think probably yes.
Yeah, could that be like parked in a, let's see how many people we have and whether or not
Mhm.
what they're covering is covered by somehow housing? I don't know.
okay, Finance and Advisory Committee? Yeah,
Yes,
Yes,
a member, yes,
Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council.
no.
Can I just ask on these joint town ones? I mean, don't we have to limit to Wenham?
That was the reason why I just said no to that, because we also have a cultural commission line 20 of the spreadsheet. And I think I'd rather have just the local perspective in Wenham.
Okay, that's good. So Cultural Council, no.
I would recommend though with the Recreation Committee, because that is joint, but that's a big, big committee and there's a lot that they do in both towns. And there's no
But-
way, we don't have a separate Recreation Committee in Wenham.
We
Isn't
have
that what
open
line
we do.
11?
That's a number 11.
we have an open space and recreation committee that can confer with Sean if we need to.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, if you want to think of it that way, fine. Okay. Okay. So finance, no cultural council, no recreation.
Historical Commission, Historic District Commission. I say no.
Actually, I live in a historic home, but I say no. I think it's nice that we have that designation. But I think we got to be careful of how many people we have.
Right. Iron Rail Commission, I say no.
Correct.
Dave Anderson, on the Historic Commission, I don't necessarily say yes, but I will say living on Main Street, when we touch on issues that are bigger, like economic redevelopment or development, that touch on areas in the historic district, we're going to have a conflict. And I don't know how we get around that. It may be outside of the historic district, but that's going to come into play as it stands, I think, right now. And so I don't know how we negotiate that. I don't know if that commission needs to come in to get, to make it a better process or not. I'll just flag that. I don't know if you have input on that, Margaret.
I actually do. What I would say is for the actual master plan committee, no, you don't have to have representatives from every piece. But once the discussions start and we start to get input, we're going to bring in these committees. We'll bring the HDC in to a meeting to talk about that particular aspect. Because you're absolutely right, David. Once we talk about economic development, Route 1A is where our businesses are. That's all the historic district. So that they have to be brought into the discussion. Again, they don't necessarily have to be on the committee, but they're welcome to be at every meeting. And then they will be brought in for a separate special discussion, I'm certain.
Maybe to help our fears about this, I'd like to go back to something Jennifer said, that everybody who comes to any of these planning meetings is allowed to participate in the exercises.
Absolutely.
So there will be this core group that's really doing the work, but yet anybody who comes to one of these meetings will be able to put their input. So that would be a great thing for different committees to come to when it's their topic. Or not,
So-
or anytime.
Just to pick up on Dave's comment, I would also flag the historical commission or district commission, because if we are planning and affecting the historical district in some way, they're going to want to have a say, I think. You're muted, Margaret, sorry.
No, I just said absolutely, Dan, I agree with you. The historic commission is going to be important in this plan. Because we have such a big historic district, which is also our business district.
Yeah, and not to belabor this, but I'll just flag it. I mean, as you go down this list, economic development, housing, land use, cultural resources, transportation with the new Housing Choice Act, which is probably going to touch on the historic district and whatever zone overlay. Energy, solar panels on historic homes on 1A. I was the first house. I just want to put that on the record. They touch all of this. I mean, you want to talk about, they touch all of this. So I'm not saying they have to have a seat at the table, but they touch all of this. It's the reality of this Epcot Center of colonial times that we live in. So I don't know if that means they get a seat at the table, but I do think they touch this pretty heavily.
So what do you guys think? Yes?
I think we stuck a pin in it or a flag to come back.
Okay.
Could I ask a point of order? Are non-board members allowed to raise their hand and speak up in this conversation? Or I don't, because I'm kind of new, so I don't know exactly how this committee runs.
Well, I mean, we've never really had this situation before. So, you know, Rick, this is basically sort of a working meeting. Happy to hear from members of the public.
So
Um,
here's what I
think-
suggest.
Oh, go
Dan?
ahead, Peter. I'm sorry.
Let's get one time through and
Yeah.
then take
Great,
That's
Great.
right.
thank you.
okay, so Open Space and Recreation Committee. Hello.
I say yes.
Yep. Veterans Committee, I would say no.
No, correct.
Wenham Human Rights Committee.
I would say no.
Okay, anyone disagree with that? Okay, Wish. That's a no.
What can you, what is,
I don't
what
even
is
know what that
WISH
is.
stands for?
They
Yeah, Wish-
run the summer camp.
The tea house,
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, the tea house.
No, they're
Yeah.
not part of the tea house.
yeah,
They do good acts in the background for people too. I know
Yes,
that.
they do.
they
is it
don't
the,
run the
I'm
tea
sorry, I
house?
missed that.
is it the Wenham Improvement Society? I don't
Right.
just, I just
Oh.
don't know what the,
No,
Right.
it's not the Wenham Village Improvement Society.
It's not
No.
the Village Improvement Site. It's
No.
hold on.
Wenham. Yeah.
Oh,
Somebody
I
has a
got that
hand up
wrong.
who might be
Oh,
able to help
Kirsten,
us.
Kirsten might
could tell
know.
us, yes.
Wish does donations to people in need from Wenham,
Right.
nothing to do with the Wenham Village Improvement Society.
That's right.
I'll say,
Oh,
sorry about
great.
that. I got that completely wrong,
Thank
Sorry.
you.
but I would still say no.
Correct.
Correct. I don't think it's, yeah,
Zoning Board of Appeals,
I would also say no.
Yeah, I'd say
Correct.
no.
okay. Water Commission, we say yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Assessors,
No, I
Yes.
think this is one of those things where if we have a sticky question, we should ask them, but I don't think they need to have to sit on an advisory committee.
Is this gonna
Okay.
be, are they gonna overlap with FinCom? I mean, in terms of the issues they'd be interested in?
Hmm.
I don't know that. I think they'll overlap in a way, only because,
Right.
you know, your tax rates are, you know, indicate how much money you get in taxes every year, so.
I mean, I'm just thinking like in terms of a master plan and long-term planning, if there are
Yeah.
financial implications, right? Either FinCom or the assessors are probably gonna weigh in somehow.
Yeah, and again, this committee, just because they're not on this committee doesn't mean we're not gonna get input from
Okay.
them. You know, we're absolutely gonna get input from everybody, so it's just a matter of whether they need to be on the committee.
okay, so what,
No.
so
I would say no.
on assessors,
Correct.
okay. Board of Health, I would say no.
No,
Actually, well, as we've seen in this past 2 years, we might need to be ready to move quickly. And would that be part of what we should be working for? I don't know. It's worth a conversation.
I would say no, Rick.
And I'd suggest that that's like in a way like the assessors, where we would call on their expertise if we had a question.
Okay. Sure.
Library trustees.
No,
I say
No.
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 Okay, cultural council.
What is the cultural council?
I have no idea.
I believe the Cultural Council in Wenham oversees funding for projects that, arts projects, things that benefit the community. They manage funds that are given to us by the state.
So I'd say no.
are they active?
They are active, yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
they take in applications and I don't know what they funded recently, but they're a big committee too. There's a lot of people on that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking for a wide range of not just nuts and bolts, because we're going down the first draft of this list, right? And so I think something in the culture space is kind of important to the future of a town, right? It's not just the nuts and bolts of how many acres, how many dollars, how much residential space, but what are we doing to invigorate people's enjoyment in the town and increasing their arts awareness. I mean, we didn't even talk about the museum yet, right? They're a big player in town. Maybe this is through the cultural council, they can be feeding that band of the, because cultural is one of the required spots on the list of areas we got just from Margaret a minute ago.
Yeah.
And we haven't picked anybody in that category yet.
It seems vague to me. I mean, if what they're doing is appropriating funds, I mean, I'm still leaning no.
Me too.
They're a grassroots cultural funding network supporting community-based projects in the arts, humanities, and sciences annually. Each year, this council gets approximately $10,000 in funding from the Mass Cultural Council, and they take in grant applications and disperse those funds.
Like for
So
what?
it sounds like it's similar to the CPA committee, just with a different,
No, well,
with a different,
well, this is talking more about
Source
the
funding.
arts. This is talking about more about the arts, museums, small plays, getting things off the ground in town that have some cultural value. Not we're going to restore the church, not we're going to build this park over here and this is the money for it. That's a little different, right?
well,
So-
the analogy I'm making is that they're a group, they're receiving funds and they're making the decision where to disperse the funds. Like the CPA has applications come in. I'm sure these guys have
Correct.
applications come in.
Correct.
So, I mean, I'm all for the arts. I'm not, don't misunderstand. It's
Could
just-
we identify at-large members who would have a particular focus, one of which is cultural, community, arts or something like that, and ask the cultural council people to suggest somebody?
Sure.
Can we also count up how many seats?
Yeah, how
we've
many
already-
we got, right?
Now,
Right,
hang on,
okay,
we're
thank
almost
you.
done. We're
Yeah,
almost done.
But
Yeah.
let's figure out how many we have at this point, because we're near the end of the list and now it's starting to get critical, right?
Yeah.
No, hang on. So town government study committee,
No,
No,
okay,
No.
They're done.
housing authority,
what's the
Um,
distinction between housing authority and affordable
housing
trust? And I
authority-
know what the distinction is, but we don't need people from both of them, do we? And if so,
they're-
which one?
They're very separate organizations. The house
Mhm.
is state-funded property. It's completely different than our Affordable Housing Trust. And
Affordable Housing Trust should be looking globally at all types of affordable housing. One of them is public housing, which is the housing authority.
So we
But they
should
all
go
be
with, so that housing authority then should be a no. That's what I'm trying to
Correct.
get in my head.
Yes,
all right. So Margaret, what's the magic number?
1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 6, plus if you go with historic, which is a maybe, you'd have 7.
Wow.
and that's without the cultural council.
That's without the cultural.
It's
council.
without the ad hoc members, which we haven't talked about,
Right,
right?
plus any, right.
Well,
And is it
and
also
also
without the
school
planning
board.
board people?
Yeah, so, yeah, there are a couple of other people that we would need to include. So the select board would want to have a member. Someone from your board, of course, is going to be on it. Then,
School board.
yeah, I think it's a good idea to bring someone from the school committee or this, yeah. Just to, we don't address, you don't go deeply into the school plan in the master plan, but if there's discussion about the need for a new school or something like that, that can be discussed in more general terms in the master plan.
Do we know how the school board's current master planning process is going? And would it be something that we could just, when they get their report, funnel that report into the committee to digest?
Sure. Yes, I don't know that much about it. I'm not in communication with the school department that much, but yeah, it's absolutely, you can bring them in and they can give, if they're doing a plan and a report, to bring it to you.
But you don't know what the status of that plan is at this point, Margaret?
I don't know.
I'd be more than happy to reach out to Dana Alara and ask her.
I think may I say something, Ann?
Please, this is like a
Yeah,
free for all. I think that I'm thinking of this as just a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'm happy to be dissuaded from this, but I mean, 50% of our budget is to the schools. Schools have to be, after Gordon, one of the biggest landowners in town. So, when you look at all of these items, I don't see how we can talk about, I think we need their input as much as any of these other subjects or any of these other committees. We need their direct input constantly. I mean, if it's just such a part of Wenham, the schools, I don't think we want to be dominated by the subject or by their input, but I think that they're just, it's a huge part of Wenham. And so I think it would be very difficult not to have their direct engagement throughout this process. And while I have the mic, but happy to come back to that topic, I think something Rick said is extraordinarily important that I would just kind of double underline here, which is, or I don't know who said it, but Rick brought up the concept of the museum. That's a brilliant point. Like, what I'm more interested in, and you all know this from what I said last meeting, is not necessarily who's on what committee, but who has the subject matter expertise on these topics. There are probably people at the Wenham Museum who understand every single cultural aspect to this town and would be thrilled to attend this. And I don't even care if they're not a Wenham resident, because they have such a direct nexus to our community that I would hope that they could serve. Throwing this out there, Tender Crop. I don't know the ownership at Tender Crop, but they've built a thriving business here. Could somebody from Tender Crop be invited to join this? Would we like to hear from where they're coming from? Now I'll really be the lightning rod and say Gordon College. Do we want to have someone from Gordon College be a part of this, assuming they don't tuck tail and run like their buddies in Hamilton?
Dave, I actually reached out to the head of Gordon, and I told him we were doing a master plan process, and I thought it'd be really helpful if we understood where they thought they were going over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
It's
I'm just putting it out
absolutely-
there.
Did you
Yeah.
hear anything back, Peter, on that?
Not yet.
It's reasonable to have, excuse me, like someone from Gordon College, someone from Penguin Hall, like you said, the museum, of course, any of these places that large landowners, people who, understand or have ideas about the future of the community, who have a stake in the future of the community. It's reasonable to invite all of those people to the table. Again, they
But inviting people to
But-
the table, Margaret, is a very different thing from asking them to steer the process.
right.
And work every other week or every week and take home materials and do homework and come back and report. I'm trying to keep that in my head too, that
Right.
it would be great to get some experts and stuff in here, but they've got to also commit to 10 hours a week?
That might be a lot, but I think that, I just think that because we don't invite somebody to the steering committee, doesn't mean we won't invite them to a meeting of the steering committee.
Of
Just,
course.
can you just
right.
enlighten us on what your plans are? Where would we look for those? And how would we incorporate, thinking about your plans for Gordon over the coming 20 years or something? I mean, it's not like that door would be closed if we don't invite them to sit on the committee.
And Jennifer's not here, but one thing she might say, I don't know, is she's going to be interviewing a lot of people. And it wouldn't be surprising if she's interviewing in her list of people to interview, the museum, Gordon College, the WVIS, all those other kind of ancillary pieces of the puzzle.
Sure, absolutely. So right now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Possibly historic would be 10. And then what do you think? 3 or 4 at-large members?
So that's 14 plus schools. Did
Well,
you
I
not
added
include,
school. Yeah, I included
Schools
school.
added.
and
What
select.
about
Did you share
select?
that?
what about select board?
Yeah, I included them.
So those are in the
Wait,
nine?
do you have the list typed up, Margaret?
Yeah,
Were you typing it or did you handwrite it?
Yeah, I'm just handwriting it.
Okay.
Could you just X them off on your spreadsheet that you have posted? Put an X in the column E?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got Affordable Housing Trust. No, no. Yes. 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 No, no. No.
That's a question mark.
Yeah, there's a question mark on some.
Yeah,
of them.
historic, okay, is correct.
What, can I ask,
Yeah.
what does the Iron Rail Commission do?
Manage the iron rail property. That's
That's town-owned property.
Right, but Peter, isn't that the back parcel you were talking about a few weeks ago?
Yeah, but they don't even think about it that way.
Okay, fine. I was just
They're
curious.
worried about whether the Boy Scout building is gonna fall apart.
we've got select board. And we've got,
Schools?
Schools.
and then schools.
I feel like we're missing something.
Okay,
And then at-large members.
yep, and then. you can-
However many.
And so Margaret,
Yeah.
you sent us people that were interested.
Yes, so there are 2 of them on tonight, Kirsten Alexander and Joanne Frisella. You've gotten their letters of interest, resume and their information. There was one other email I received today from a young man who is a senior in high school. His name is Goodridge. Hold on.
Yep.
I just had his name. Walker Goodridge. He sent me a cute email. Hey, Megan, how you doing?
His English
I
got
had
a
to
lot
laugh
better.
at it.
If you read the whole thing, his grammar got a lot better. It's got
Hey,
a lot
Megan,
better.
how you doing? It did get better as the
Yes,
letter.
it did.
Because I reached out to the principal at the school and asked if there were any students who were interested in being on the master plan committee. I've talked to other people and, I think most people feel like it wouldn't be bad to have some youth representation on the committee, especially someone who's interested in the community. The principal did say he was going to reach out to some other students and see, but this was the one I got today.
So it sounds like he's graduating this year. Do we know anything
like
more
it.
about him? Have you spoken
So-
to him or?
Yeah, well, I sent him back an email and I told him the commitment is going to be like an 18-month to 20-month commitment. And there would be a lot of in-person events to see if it was something he was still interested in. I did not hear back from him today, so.
That sounds kind of hard.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what his plan is for his life
Yeah.
post.
I suggested also to the principal that maybe even a sophomore or a junior, someone who's going to be in town over the next couple of years who might be interested in sitting in on it.
I also went a step further. I wonder if there's a lesson, excuse me, if there's some class inside of the public
Civics or
school
something.
system that would do kind of a mini on their own master plan and somehow we could help educate them on what the process is. You know what I mean? Inside the school system, not as part of this committee.
Yeah, I don't know if they still teach civics in school. I don't know.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, not as well as they should, I think.
Well, they should.
I found a hole in this list, I think. I don't know, maybe not agree. I don't see anybody from public safety.
Well, I was gonna ask about certain town departments.
Well, that's the thing too. We don't have all the town departments listed here. The town administrator probably should be on the list.
Ad hoc, anyway, and he
Yeah,
can pull in. who
Ad
he
hoc, exactly. We could put him on, possibly DPW director, police and fire. We do want to bring them all
Question is
into
whether
the
these
team.
folks, whether we need all of them or whether we
Right.
need somebody who represents like the town administrator who can pull people into meetings if needed.
Exactly.
And I think the select board members certainly will have a lot of insight into the public safety and other things. He'll have a lot of access to that. They will have a lot of access, so. Yeah, and you're right. This
Or we
this-
could just name Steve Kavanaugh.
That's right. 'cause
Well,
he
no,
does
what about the
everything.
police chief? The new police, the new DiNapoli, he's very,
Well, the interesting thing about Steve Kavanaugh, he's lived here forever. He's been on
And
a
he's a
lot,
former member of the planning board.
yeah, so
Yeah.
And he's the fire chief and he's the animal control officer, I found out.
nothing against him. I
other
mean, I don't want my
things.
house to burn down, but I also looking at someone who has, just a different perspective on what
Yeah.
what Wenham is, and that would be the police chief.
Well, yeah, and so if you have the police chief, you have to have the fire chief. If you have the police chief and the fire chief, you have to have the director of public works. If you have the police chief and the fire chief and the director of public work, you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, and
I
I
can see
really
that.
do believe that Jen will have a meeting with staff. We will bring the staff into a meeting for this, that we're not going to require that they come to every meeting. So making them a part of that committee, I don't know is necessary. And I don't think it's common to really add those people to the actual committee.
So, and to pick up on your last comment and to circle back to where we were before we started going through this list. Is now a good time to try to hash out amongst the board what our sense is in terms of how big do we want this committee to be? Because
so how,
I
so
will
how
throw out
many,
there-
how many
What?
how many do we
Well-
have right here?
Wait a minute, is Dan finished with his thought?
Sorry,
Not yet. What I was gonna say is just generally, for, one of the things we were concerned about in even having this committee was sort of the efficiency of this process and moving it forward and having a quorum for these steering committee meetings. So I'm in the camp of, I think we should be looking more towards the like 10 to 12 range than the 20 to 24 range. That's how I'm leaning on this.
I agree with that.
I can
So
agree
do
with
I.
that. Yeah.
Solidly
And-
behind you.
Can I say one other thing here about planning from us? Are we gonna have two members that we were talking about? We're not gonna have more than two because then we'd have a quorum issue that we'd have to deal
Right.
with.
But also, Jennifer did say that she worked with the town or one or two that they were joint planning board / master plan committee meetings every time they
Yeah.
happened because they
I-
had more planning.
I don't think we want to do that though. But at least I don't want to do that. I don't want to turn these because the purpose of the steering committee is to assist us in this process and to steer this thing forward. So if every one of these meetings turns into a planning board meeting, it's effectively, we're all sitting on them anyway, right? So what I was going to suggest was if we have two members or we say we're going to have two planning board members on this steering committee, I know what the consultant said last week, but I think we should really consider having those members be rotating members so that it's not just two of us sitting on every single one of these, that we can kind of hand the baton off every now and then. Because, you're basically talking about 40% of this board is going to be much more involved in this process than the other 60% of the board. Those are my thoughts for now.
That's a great idea.
I agree with that.
I like it.
Although Peter,
I'm not
you're
sure we
you're
can do
stuck
that
wearing
revolving
two hats
thing.
anyway.
I'm
Why
sorry.
can't we do a revolving thing, Margaret?
Well, I mean, so you would appoint all of you onto this board and then you're all on the master plan.
Oh, I
steering-
think it's because of the appointment thing.
And then you have to take turns being on it? I mean,
No, I think you could just, well, if I read your emails right, it's the select board that actually does the appointing for this steering committee thing.
right.
So when it comes to the planning board slots, just say 2 planning board members to be designated by planning board from whatever.
No, it's got to be people though. I mean, we have to appoint people. We can't just appoint members. When they do
Why?
they have to appoint people.
They can appoint however they want to do it, as long as it's specified.
Correct.
Yeah, it doesn't specify that they have to be named, Margaret, I don't think, if I read that right.
Okay, I've never seen that done.
I would,
Fine.
can I just kind of slip into my select board? I would want to see names.
That's fine. Then every quarter, we could say, we're gonna submit new names for those 2 positions and have them approved by the select board. I don't think that would be a huge problem, right?
I mean, what, Peter, why couldn't it be 2 planning board members to be determined by the planning board on an
Maybe-
ongoing basis?
Dan, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that for all of these positions, we weren't going to necessarily name names.
Oh, no,
No.
just
No,
the,
no,
just the
no.
2 planning board spots. That's all
Yeah.
I'm talking
Okay.
about.
Yeah,
So
let
that
me,
can-
let me
so
look
that
into
can-
it and
So
see how
I
that'll
withdraw
work
my
logistically.
comment.
Yeah. Let me see how that'll work logistically, if it's something, if that's what the planning board wants to do. And of course, the planning board, any members can sit on these meetings anytime they want. You can even have a quorum at this meeting if you want, of planning board members or not. We would just post it if you all want to be there, so.
Margaret, can you explain that? It's just that it has to be posted. You don't have to conduct any planning board work
No.
in that meeting, correct?
No, correct. So when there is a master plan steering committee meeting, if 3 of you want to be at that meeting, all I need to do is post and say it's a joint master plan planning board meeting. I have to post those meetings anyway.
I'm gonna say, you have to post those meetings anyway, whether
I
we're there or
do.
not,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
have to post that it's a master plan steering committee meeting. And if there's going to be more than 2 members of the planning board at it, I have to add on that it's a planning board meeting too. That's all.
I think that's what the consultant was talking about when she
Correct.
said it's
Yes.
this joint thing.
Okay. All right, let me ask about that and see if we can do that so that the planning board can rotate.
Yeah, that's a great idea. 'Cause
Yeah.
That would share the
Can
burden
we
too.
also discuss at-large members? Did we want 3?
Yep. I would say 3 at least, it would be good. And then, of course, all the public is welcome to these meetings and is welcome to participate in any of the activities.
So that gets back to the number question. How many does that make it?
So if
Is
we've
it
got 1,
counting?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If we do 3, that'll give us 12.
Well,
Woohoo.
and planning was 2, right? So
Planning was
you have an
2.
X.
Okay, so we're
Yeah.
gonna have 2 for planning.
So
Okay.
that makes it 13, which is an odd number, which is helpful if they have to vote on something.
Is that manageable for everybody, that number?
13 is manageable.
Depends how superstitious you are.
No.
Not in that number. 11, I'm superstitious about, not 13.
I would say that 13 is a reasonable number. It may be big, but it's a good group. It's a good group to start with, because some people might drop out too. They may decide they don't want to continue with it. We'll
Dan,
see.
does it make you anxious to have this be 13? And do we
No.
have it's 14 if you count the administrator.
And
The town
we still have a question mark on historical, don't we?
We do.
We do.
I think we're still in your comfort zone.
13. I mean, I could pair from this list. I mean, I think there are things we don't necessarily need, but
I think now would be a good time to discuss it, don't you? I mean, everybody agree?
I make a comment?
Oh, Joanne has a question, Ann.
If you don't mind, I just had one thought, looking at this list and comparing it with the list that we started with from the RFP. Do we have anyone on this list that can really speak to transportation? Because that's going to
You
be.
know, that is a great
issue.
question. And I had that question in my mind when I was driving and heard Margaret go through the list.
Mhm.
Who speaks to transportation in this town?
What do you
The
mean
only-
by transportation?
Right. There's two different
All
categories.
of it, bikes, trains,
Right.
automobiles.
Well, I mean,
And I
there's
think that
there's sort of the
road-
traffic,
The road
there's
improvements.
the traffic safety component to it. And then
Yep.
there's the sort of commuting, getting around component.
But we
There's
don't
an
have a
MB
committee. We don't have a transportation committee in
Right.
town.
We don't have like a highway authority or anything. DPW manages our roads, sidewalk, trail, not trails, but the roads and stuff. They do trails. I would say the DPW, but again, it's not a committee, it's a staff person. The DPW director, knows what the town's plans are each year for Chapter 90 money, where those funds are going to go to, what roads need fixing, things like that. The big thing in Wenham is this parking, not parking, but traffic light on 1A. That's still a big item that's out there that we're still working on.
Is it any closer?
I don't know. Well, there hasn't been a town administrator to move forward with it. The town administrator also is the person I think that will bring a lot of insight into transportation, because he works closely with.
There was a committee in town called Walk Wenham at one point,
Hmm.
which I think has disbanded.
Roadside paths. I was part of it for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Franny LaViviac.
Are there still
Yeah.
only two traffic lights in town?
There still are only two traffic lights in
One.
town, yes. The one by the post office and the one out on 97.
Oh, the one by the post office. That doesn't actually count. That only goes.
I have had to stop my
up
car
that
there.
counts.
street. That's a pedestrian light.
And if we get our thing approved by the state, there'll be 3 traffic lights. So
It will be.
wow, 50% increase.
So,
Um,
for what it's
Unless
worth,
they take that post office one away because of the proximity, which is possible.
Which
But
they
anyway,
think they will.
I did reach out to, Rich, and I'm meeting with him tomorrow to talk about this whole thing.
who?
Because
I'm sorry, I
Rich who?
missed that.
Rich Souza,
Who is that?
He's our new DPW director.
Oh, gotcha.
because at the last select board meeting, I was asking who's driving this whole traffic light thing? And, so I just want to find out more about it.
Yeah, he probably doesn't have a whole lot of insight into it yet, Peter. I don't know if he's been brought up to speed. But that was, the TA and the select board back many years ago.
I also think that the DPW tends to be very road focused, which is certainly part of the issue around here, but there's bikes and there's the transit system. So, and we have this whole transit development
MBTA.
piece that we have to work in. So I
Isn't
really
there a-
think Joanne's point is well taken there. It's not really a transportation person unless somebody on this committee or someone else knows someone who that's what they do for a living. Their interest is as a transportation advocate or engineer or thought leader somehow who lives in town. I don't know such a person, but maybe others do.
A while ago, there used to be a representative to the MBTA from Hamilton and Wenham. Does that still exist?
I don't know. I'm not
Huh.
sure.
I got to think about that. I'll try to figure
Yeah,
it out.
I can find that out though, if there is someone. Because I think we also have a representative to the airport, the
We do.
local
yeah.
airport.
So can I ask on transportation? I mean, I'm not saying it's not an important category, but in this kind of process, does it play a bigger role for towns that are obviously larger than we are? I mean, we're a pretty small town and we already have an MBTA station, right? It's,
Yeah.
I know, I don't know how many, if we have any bus routes, but I'm just wondering what is there on that front for us?
Right. I don't know that transportation is going to be one of our big issues, certainly. Getting a traffic light on 1A.
Bike lanes possibly.
Yep. So, okay. So I was just, oh, you moved the thing. I was gonna,
Oh, I'm
I was-
sorry. Did
that's
you?
okay. So with respect to some of these categories, I think there's some overlap between open space and rec and
Yeah.
Concom.
Yeah.
If you think about it, and
Mhm.
I would lean more towards, if we were choosing between those, I'd lean more towards open space and rec. And to what you just said, if you're talking bike lanes, I mean, that would be open space and rec as well, which would kind of overlap with transportation. When I think of Concon, I'm thinking of mostly wetlands.
Natural resources,
Water
like wildlife
resources.
corridors,
Yeah.
wetlands, recharge areas.
Yeah. And I
Maybe I'm
think-
only thinking it, but I mean, their focus is on basically preserving wetlands is a large part of it, right?
Yeah, all of our water resources is what the Conservation Commission deals with.
Well, and they, beyond that too, I think if there were
Right.
wildlife issues, they would deal with that.
Well, they do have a big role because about 50% of the town is in some kind of conservation state.
Right.
A swamp?
In their jurisdiction, yeah.
And I
Yeah, one of
don't
the reasons,
know if there are endangered species that we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
Salamanders are the ones I think of in wetland areas, but
one of the reasons why Salem cast us off in the 1630s was they felt that there was nothing worthy up here. There were no natural resources and it was all swamp. So they said, you guys can go build your own town there. Kind of interesting fact.
Okay. I was just, I
now
mean,
we filter their water.
if you drill
Right,
down to it,
right.
right, it's in addition to preserving the wetlands, and you raised a really good point with endangered species, but at its core, it's about preserving open space, kind of. So I was just thinking it kind of overlaps with what you're saying, and I'm only throwing this out there if we're trying to whittle down, that's all.
Yeah. I don't know whether anyone on the Conservation Commission has the time to do this. They meet twice a month. Already, their commission meets every twice on Monday, twice a month. So, I mean, we can put it out there if they feel like they want someone to be on it. And again, we'll pull them in. We'll get them in to talk about the issues during the process.
Yeah, I would just say, I think the Open Space and Rec Commission has a very different focus than, I mean, we don't do land, it's not conservation for the sake of preserving natural features so much as it is open space for the aesthetic and recreational and sort of climate protection kinds of reasons, but Concom is really more about what are the natural features and natural resources in town. There's an element of a master plan that requires us to document all the natural features and say something about the geology and the, degree to which the town is covered with water and has water resources and this and that. The other thing, and open space and rec that's not what that committee does. So.
Well, you have the open space plan that was done in 2017.
Yeah, we've already, and we've already done a plan, right?
Yeah.
So.
And they do go into the geological features of the town. And so we have a lot of that information already through the open space committee. So.
Yeah, but not for the same reason that the Concom would have looked at it.
Right. So I think you're going to end up with like 13 or 14 people around that. which is, it's kind of average. They usually range from 9 to sometimes 20, depending on the size of the community.
Well, I mean, I would entertain a motion to put forward a slate of are we calling this an advisory committee? Advisory committee members made up of folks from these boards and commissions plus at-large members. Is that what we need to do tonight? Or are we going to say we're going to continue this until each of these folk have said yay or nay? I mean, what's people's
Yeah.
thoughts? This is, as we said, there's no, the last time anybody did this in Wenham was however 40 years ago, so we don't have any.
60.
And I have a generic motion I can propose, which is I would move that we create a steering committee for the master plan process with a slate of members not to exceed 14. And I mean, we can further designate, or I can end the motion there.
Do I have a second for the motion without the further designation?
Can I clarify?
Of course.
That I think, I mean, we want to pick up on this. I'm just trying to start the process so that
Right.
we can now.
So we could
fill it.
pass this motion and then we could move on to another one that specifies.
Right, so I guess I can add to the motion, and with the 14 to be further identified by the planning board.
Do I have a
Does that make-
second?
Wait, just a quick question. What I just heard was that you're moving to create an advisory committee, Dan, is that right?
Yes, so this advisory committee, whatever are we calling it a steering committee or an advisory committee, whatever we're calling it?
Whatever you call it.
I'm just really focused on what's the size of the committee gonna be right now?
I mean, not to gum this up, but didn't we establish with Margaret that only the select board can form the committee?
Right.
The select board will appoint them, and the planning board should motion to recommend to the select board
that they appoint.
create, that they
14-member
appoint a
board.
steering committee of 14 members made up of essentially people from these groups and then the at-large people that you can name.
So is this like an intention or like a spirit? Like it is the intention of planning board that the select board?
I think it's a
appoint steering-
recommendation.
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
a
a-
recommendation.
I think it's
Okay.
a formal recommendation.
So what I
And I
think
should
we-
say I have a hard stop at 6:40, so I apologize in advance.
So do we have to fill in all the dots tonight, or can we do this motion and then come back and say, or if you want, we could have another motion that says we recommend 3 at-large members, 2 planning board members, 1 from the school committee, 1 from the if you want to do that.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to do it, Dan. If you
Well, I
want-
was saying, but I was moving to say not to exceed 14 because it didn't seem like we were going to get to finality on how we were going to plug all the holes tonight.
Okay. You know what, Ann, Catherine has a question. I'm not sure what she needs. She may-
Catherine, you have a
Yeah.
question.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of waiting for you to work this out, but can you please either call it a steering committee or an advisory committee?
Oh, yes, I know, right?
Thank
Can we-
you.
I vote steering.
I vote advisory.
Uh-oh.
I don't care.
Steering, what
Peter?
advisor? David, what do you want to call it?
What, isn't there language in the bylaw?
There isn't really, no. This is not a big.
It's an ad hoc committee.
It's,
So-
yeah, it's just a committee that the planning board can recommend, and then the select board will name it, or not name it, but the select board will appoint them.
So to Rick's point, I
I
think.
think
that-
you
I
said
think-
long-term planning is what you put in your email, Margaret.
That was what's in our bylaw, and again, I don't think it's, you
That's,
lawyers, I'm telling you.
that's vague. I think that term was vague too, when
Yeah.
I read that. I said, I think that could also be a point of contention if somebody gets upset about,
Yeah.
does the
It-
select
it
board
might
really have
be.
the right to do it? So,
Rick, can I probe your language choice? Do you
Yes.
mean to suggest that this is advising the planning board and not steering the process?
correct. It's not, yes, since the beginning of my involvement and listening to what's going on about this, I think we got people get caught up on steering, and that to me is too strong a term for what I think we're really trying to do with this group. They're really advising the planning board, who has to finally make the decision as to what the master plan is going to be. So they're more to me as an advisory or I don't know a better word for it, as opposed to when I hear steering committee, I think like, wow, power.
Yeah,
But
okay. I think I'll switch and say I actually do care and I agree with you.
Can
I'm
I ask
easy.
a question?
Please.
Kind of waiting. So just a couple of thoughts. One, is there a charge for the committee? Because that would clarify both who should
Oh,
be on it.
that's way ahead of where we are.
Okay, well, because I think it's,
that's a select board thing. I
Right,
think
so
the
it's-
select
it's
board
hard-
charges the committee.
it's hard to decide who should be on the committee unless you have the exact purpose of the committee.
Well,
I'm-
the purpose of the committee is to advise the planning board, just as Rick Woodland just said, on, the master plan. So I think there's that. I think the charge gets developed by the selects when they appoint. And what our job is right now is to recommend to the selects the number and composition of this advisory committee.
Right. So the other thought I had is just looking at this list. I think the average age is probably around 60. And this is a forward-thinking report. I love that there's a high school student that's interested, but it seems like there's a pretty big gap
Oh.
between 17
Oh, I
and 50.
Are you talking about
Potentially.
us being old, or are you talking
No,
about
the
on this
list
list?
of chairs. So my thought was that rather than just chairs, go back to the committees and say, is there someone maybe newer to town?
Yeah. We're not
Yeah.
saying, that these people as listed here would be asked. It's these committees would provide a representative. I mean, that's how I understand what we've just done.
Right, but
Am
I
I
think
wrong?
it's a fairly self-selecting group of people who are on town committees that tend to skew towards older, longer term residents and retirees. So just putting that out there, because
Right.
we're looking at the future of Wenham, and I think there's a lot of very new residents who maybe haven't been particularly involved, who may
Well-
have outside experience that would be helpful.
Speaking from my experience on the Open Space and Recreation Committee, we have a couple of quite young folk who are on that committee and potentially could be tapped to be part of this. So,
and I
I
think
mean,
that could be.
I think you're right that the list of folks that you see in front of you tend to be people who have enough time to give to chair a committee, and they tend to be older and potentially grayer. But I don't know that that's necessarily true for the membership in all cases. So, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I'm not really sure how we, other than, more at-large members and trying to reach out to people who have small children in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and that was another thought, including groups like WVIS or the Mothers Club, the Garden Club, the Wenham Museum, other.
Folks, I'm going to have to give up my vote on this because
Hold
I
on,
have a
Ann.
hard stop.
And I'm gonna withdraw my last motion, and make a new one that will
Okay.
try to tidy
Real
it
quick,
up.
and
okay?
then I have to,
And-
I can switch back to my phone and get back in my car, but I
Yeah,
have a
that's
meeting in Beverly at 7.
With respect to the terminology, I think I agree on advisory rather than steering, so that would be at least 3 of us. So here is the motion I'm going to propose. I move that we recommend to the select board that it create an advisory committee to the planning board comprised of not more than 14 members as follows: a member from the Affordable Housing Trust, one member from the Conservation Commission, one member from Council on Aging, one member from Finance and Advisory Committee, one member from Open Space and Rec Committee, one member from the Water Commission, one member from the Select Board, two members from the Planning Board to be determined by the Planning Board on a rotating basis, one member from the School Committee, and up to 4 at-large candidates.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion on the floor and a second. I will take a vote unless there's further discussion on the motion, and I have to switch to my phone, so. Any
don't
further
think you had
discussion
the-
on the motion?
I don't think you have the town administrator on that list as ex officio.
Right.
Can I take a
did
friendly
not.
amendment?
That
I'd
would
like to
get us
make an
to
amendment.
15 if we do that, but
I'd like to make an amendment that we also include in that list the town administrator
As ad hoc.
as
or
ad
ex
hoc,
officio.
as ad hoc, yes.
so if we did that and if we changed the at-large to up to 3 instead of up to 4, we'd still be at 14.
Do we want an
wanna-
even number or an odd number?
I don't think it matters a lot the way. If you get, an odd number, of course, is better for voting purposes, but this is a pretty large committee, so.
Yeah, you're gonna get 14
Go
people
with the
there every.
15.
Margaret, you're gonna have to let me into the meeting because I'm switching to
will.
my phone.
For sure. So if we amend it to add the TA as an ad hoc and up to, and still leave it at 4 at large, you still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
That's
6,
15.
9, 10, 11, yeah, 15. No, I think that's reasonable.
I mean, you can have 14 voting members and 1 ex officio. Does that matter in any way to you, Dan?
Nope.
It's Ann, I'm back on. So do we have
Yeah.
a second on the amended motion?
Peter Clay seconds the amended motion.
Okay.
Can we take a vote on this motion?
You want to call the roll?
I can't see if, I can't see if hands are up, so just confirm that that's a good idea. Weeks
do it.
says aye.
Pascarello
Clay
says aye.
Clay says yes.
Anderson
Woodland?
says aye.
Woodland says yes.
All right,
All
great.
right, so that
Okay.
may conclude our business for this evening, is that?
Yeah. I
correct?
just want to let you know, so what I'll do is, I'll put this information together. I'll talk to, I'll get a letter to send out to the boards and committees, asking them to appoint someone from their committee. And then we can discuss with these 2 people, Joanne and Kirsten, that we can recommend them also to the select board to be appointed as at-large members. And we'll hope we get some other people who are interested.
Wasn't there a letter from somebody named Sue? Her last name began with a P.
So, yeah, Sue Petrolia, yes.
She's from the
It's not on.
climate action
Yep.
team.
Yep, Sue Petrolia is great. Yeah, that's right. She's on the Climate Action Committee.
I just have one question. When's the closing period for volunteers to submit? Should we
like
wait until
next
that,
week?
de-
Yeah.
should we wait until that deadline before
Yeah.
we make a selection on the team
Yep.
members from the
Yep.
at-large? Okay,
Yeah, for
thank you.
sure.
Thank you.
Are we just, I thought what we were gonna do is just provide the letters of interest to the select board, because it's up to the select board at this point, right? To pick the at-large. Or,
We can do it that way. If you don't want to specifically recommend anyone, we can just say these are the people that are interested and let them appoint them. That makes sense.
But I also feel that we could take that responsibility on ourselves too.
Yeah, but they still will have the final word.
But
Correct,
correct.
correct.
I think we should have a point of view as to whether the people that want to participate that we say, yeah, we agree.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
That's just, well, we can't do that tonight then.
Well, you
No,
don't
we
need to
can't.
do it tonight. We're
Because Rick, you just said you want to leave this open for a while, right? So we couldn't, there's no way we could make
Correct.
at-large recommendations tonight. Okay.
Correct. Until that closing period, that's the only fair thing to do, right? Is to wait till we get all the recipients, then review them, pick the best of the bunch we think of the skills and their interests match what we need, and fill in the gaps that we don't have in the town list. Right.
Yeah, you're gonna meet again on June 9th. So, and that is supposed to be technically the kickoff meeting. But it's fine to not have the steering committee in place or the advisory committee in place on that night. We can get that to the select board for their June 21st meeting. And so the first meeting of the advisory committee will be after June 21st. So it gives us a little time to pull it all together.
I also wonder how much work is going to be done over the summer with given vacation schedules and et cetera. So
Well, I'm hopeful that something can be done, even if it's some kind of an event, because the summertime, is a good time to
Yeah.
be there talking to people. So,
just trying to manage expectations about how
Yeah.
much we're going to see until September.
okay. I have another meeting that I have to start at 7 o'clock. So,
I move that we adjourn until June 9th.
okay,
Second,
great. Thank you.
I'm in
Place.
favor. I vote aye.
Clay says yes.
Woodland's a yes.
Anderson, yes.
Nice to see everyone.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Ann, do you vote yes? We lose her?
Yeah, I think we did.
She must be driving in Wenham.
Still
No, I'm driving. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yes.
now.
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I had hit both mute buttons to unmute myself instead of only one in the car, which is always a mistake. I did vote yes to adjourn the meeting, and I also thanked everyone for a productive meeting, and everyone on the board and all of our helpful participation from interested folks. So thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ann. All right, we'll
Bye,
talk
everybody.
later. Bye.
See you on the 9th.